Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It's 5 o'clock and we're starting the Legislative and Ordinance Committee of June 9th at 5 o'clock, calling the meeting to order. We'll take attendance. Burns.
Here.
Adams.
Here.
Oniski here. Next item 4 is approval of the minutes of our June 2nd, 2021 meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes of the June 2nd, 2021 meeting as written.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Roll call. Adams.
Yes.
Burns.
Yes.
Oniski is yes also. Item 5 on the agenda is submitting a resolution authorizing an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Southwick for dispatch services. So let me start this with just a little bit of an introduction of what we're looking at. Basically, we're looking, Westfield and Southwick are looking to share the dispatch services for police and fire, which would be held in Westfield and in the form of forming a regional dispatch center. This is going to be the first meeting we have on it in L&O. Nina, who's been operating from the, who's the head dispatch in Westfield, has been working with this for a while. She is not here tonight, so we're just going to go over what we can and then follow up with meetings next week to see if we could get this finalized with a hopeful vote at our meeting on the city council meeting on June 17th, which would allow the mayor to sign the agreement, and which will also have Southwick go ahead and allow them to sign the agreement, which will free up quite a bit of monies in the form of state grants to help accomplish this. Does anyone else have anything to add? Any counselors first?
Oh, you're good, Bill.
Okay, anyone from the Southwick side, Carl or Selectman Moglen, like to make a statement about this?
Well, for us,
Go ahead, Carl.
I mean, for us, this is our 4th review of doing a regional dispatch. I mean, we started this process 5 or 6 years ago, looking at other communities and other configurations, and those ones did not pan out. This is this situation is much further along, and the grants have been filed, by Nina with Southwick in terms of the letters of intent and all the other instruments that we were required to sign. And we also have the same parallel process through Westcom ongoing. So this is, we just want to get to the point where we can conclude these proceedings and emerge with an agreement in principle and have it signed. Shauna and Nina have been working with Ben Coyle on different drafts, and I believe the latest draft, Shauna, that you had sent to Ben, Doug and I have it in front of us, and the chiefs are okay with it because it seemed to reflect the last meeting we had over here in Southwick to work out some issues to really make this look like it embodies a regional approach.
I think that's, Ben and I worked really hard on trying to ensure that, an IMA is different than a full-on regionalization. We have several IMAs with the town of Southwick for different types of services. And we're, so this isn't nobody's first rodeo on this, but the dispatch piece is, it's different. And so, Westcom is a full-on regional under a state statute for regionalization, and IMA is a little bit different. So making sure that, Southwick was getting the services that they need and the seat at the table at the same time, ensuring that, our employees are still, we're not violating any of our CBAs or anything of that nature. So I think we came up with a really good balance. And, I don't speak dispatch, neither does Ben. So we did need Nina for a couple of other of the pieces of, radio equipment and things of that nature. But I think we pretty much have it hammered out. And again, it's just, city council's approval under chapter 40, section 4A is to allow the mayor to sign.
right?
Right, and
Because this-
I want to just, first of all, thank, Shauna and Nina, police and fire chief, Mayor Humison, and everyone that kind of came to the table to work through some of this to get to where we are, right? We had gone a couple of times down a path with Westfield that never really came to fruition. We took up this regional dispatch thing again in earnest a year or so ago, and we actually were very far down the path with another entity. Our guys really had we have an affinity for working with the city of Westfield on these types of things. And talking to Shauna and the state folks, we realize that there's a huge difference between a regional PSAP and, an IMA. And so to work on that together and to make sure that we had accommodated some of the work that we had already done with a dispatch center that's used to pulling in other communities into a region. Nina was fantastic as far as, helping us and working through some of those issues and kind of helping to understand what some of those issues are that still need to be worked out. And like I said, that's mostly blocking and tackling operational stuff that is going to be impactful for us and different from what you guys are doing today. But I'm very optimistic that that's all going to be worked out under the grant and the proposals that have been set forth. And I think, again, to Shauna's credit and Ben's credit, one of the objectives we had when we spoke with Mayor Humison and Nina was, look, we just didn't want to be a customer of Westfield. And, we're sending you a check every year and you're going to answer the phone when 911 rings. We really want to be a partner in the dispatch and make sure we're all working together for the same goal, and to be a partner in this endeavor. And as best that we could do that under an IMA versus a full-on regional deal. I think we've achieved that with this doc. And, thanks to, Mr. Oniski and everyone else who's chimed in along the way to try to help this along. I'm glad that we've gotten to where we've gotten.
Thank you, Doug. So, I mean, it looks like where we're at now, Shannon, if I'm not mistaken, you had sent out the latest draft, or at least the latest one that you have, I assume, and I had forwarded it to the other counselors. Now, there's a few things that are still need to be questioned on this. Can you start actually by going through just sort of a synopsis of the agreement?
Sure. So again, it's still, it's dispatch isn't changing, location or employees for Westfield. It's still going to be where it is. Again, we would just be taking on the dispatch calls for the town of Southwick. This kind of just goes, the agreement just kind of goes through the parameters, and the comments that are still remaining were the things that Ben and I, when we were discussing in the last iteration of this, was just, again, because neither of us speak dispatch, that we wanted to make sure that we were getting it exactly right. And just as Doug had stated, they didn't want to be just writing a check and getting a service. They really want to be involved in this and under the IMA process, just the way that we could set it up. This is the way that we've been able to do it. So, I guess I'm just not really sure. Do you want me to go through the entire agreement? Or do you want me to just go through some of the comments? The term is for 3 years, and it can be extended by written agreement of the parties for 3 additional 2-year terms. So that's what the council would be authorizing at this point. So for a total of, 9 total years. And again, at the end of that, it would be another IMA. We'd go through this process again. And it's been mentioned before that if it is something that both communities are looking for, maybe during that time frame, maybe a full regionalization is something that we could look forward to at that point. But this is a really good start to get the communities moving on that. The other provisions kind of go through the actual operations, which I think at the next meeting, Nina could probably speak to a little bit better than I can about how it will work and what each community would have in terms of duties and responsibilities for each of the communities. And then the big one, I think that was the hardest to work out under an IMA structure is the executive board. So both the police and fire chiefs from both communities will be on the executive board, as well as the chief executive officer or their designee, and Nina. So then there's a lot of advisory, the role of the executive board, reviewing the performance of the center, making sure that everybody is getting the service that they need. If there's things that could be done better, that's what the advisory board would be there for. So, and then again, the costs, it's anticipated that the grant would cover the cost, and Nina would apply for the grant on behalf of Southwick each year. And for the first 3 years of the agreement, it's anticipated that the state 911 department grant would cover the full amount for Southwick. And then after that, I think it was the 4th year would be 50%, and the 5th year would be 25%, all covered by the grant. And after that, it would be Southwick's writing the check.
And I think there was also a formula in there, or there was some discussion around having, due to population changes in either town, that the formula would be revised or re-looked at. But I think to add some security to the agreement was, at no point would Southwick's share drop below $100,000, right? I don't know if there was ever any thought of that angle that caused some pause for reservation, but we want to be sure that, you know, if our population increased but not as fast as Westfield, that would cause our share to go. We're going to floor that at $100,000, right? No matter what.
Yep.
So, and even if another town comes in, we're still in at that level.
Right. That's the value of the service to the town of Southwick, is that's what the determination was $100,000. And again, that it's anticipated that the grant will cover that in its entirety for the first 3 years, and then 50% for the year 4 and 25% for year 5.
Right, because you may end up having other municipalities contact you as they all end up having to migrate to some form of regionalization.
Right, and the state is really pushing for that. So I really, I applaud Nina and I applaud the town of Southwick for really kind of reaching out and getting this accomplished. I didn't realize that there were, first of all, the discussions had been going on for as long. I was just kind of brought into this in April of, we're really looking to get this done by the end of the fiscal year. So it was a kind of a Herculean effort on everybody's part to kind of get it to the finish line. And I think it's a pretty good working document. Again, there are a couple of, I know what the draft that you all have has a couple of comments in it that I had sent to Southwick's attorney to kind of finalize, but it sounds as if they've already had the discussions, and we should probably have this completed and final by the time you meet on this again, when Nina can speak to more of the operational items.
Thank you, Attorney Reed. Now, I was talking a little bit, or actually communicating via email with Nina on some of the funding that's going along with this. I don't really have a full, I guess, synopsis of the funding. Doug or Carl or Shanna, for that matter, would you have a breakdown? I mean, I've got a $2.7 million or $2.17 million grant, it looks like. And what any of these amounts are covering. I don't know if anyone can speak to that, or
Carl can speak to it probably in greater detail, and we can get you all the data. But I can
get you a copy of the application that Nina filed, but it's going to definitely speak to the issue of all the capital needs that you need within the city, and all of the issues that have to be taken care of for Southwick to successfully be integrated into the system. So that's part of doing that regional application for those funds, is to address both our capital needs of not that we wouldn't have to undertake if we were continuing to keep our dispatch services here and had to do our capital upgrades, as well as the capital needs that you have at the city that's going to be opened up by this opportunity. And that's usually what an IMA does, is it allows parties to come together, and when they do the application for funding to the respective state agency, that's when those other types of benefits that you're able to capture that you would not otherwise be able to capture as a standalone community.
Okay, so I'm not familiar with the grant. I'm behind the 8 ball a little bit on this. Yeah, you all have discussed it, for quite a while.
I mean, a couple of things I learned, Bill, and one is a million plus of the first grant is a radio system in our town, right? Our radio system was at its functional end of life. The radio console at the dispatch was at its functional end of life, right? So that's what kind of brought about us revisiting this whole regional dispatch in the first place, was, do we go and spend that money? And which basically puts us back where we are in the current dispatch situation for another 10 years or so while we work off the value of that? Or do we look at what the state is driving at, which is, hey, we want you to be in a region, and we want everybody to be in a region. And I think one of the things that I learned from the process, even talking to Nina and the state, was this is advantageous for Westfield too by being in a region financially, from the grant process and the funding mechanism from E911 and so on and so forth. The other thing that we looked at, and this just goes a little bit afield of that, but it was a key point, when we started talking about this is going to end up being a huge game of musical chairs. So as everybody goes and finds the chair when the music stops, it's not going to be fun for the town that you're the last one in, right? Or the last one standing. So if everybody starts moving toward a Westcom or some other regional, right? The cities and towns that find themselves with a standalone dispatch are not going to be eligible for funding. They're going to be told, versus the carrot and the stick, right? Right now, the carrot's out there. Eventually, those carrots are going to go away, and the state's just going to say, no more E911 for standalone dispatch. That's my opinion as where they're going 10 years down the road. And if we were looking at, oh, okay, Southwick goes over to Westcom, and these guys go here, and these guys go here, and Westfield's built out a very beautiful center, but they're going it alone, it's going to be eventually a problem for Westfield. So having this discussion with Southwick, and then potentially other communities surrounding, in the future, you guys are now in a better place overall with this agreement in place as now a region. And if, as Shauna mentioned, if we decide to go forward together as, to create a true region like Westcom or something like that versus IMA to IMA, but the money is advantageous even for Westfield right now under the grant formula that the state is running.
Okay, thank you, Doug.
Yeah.
Thanks, James, for nodding your head.
Yeah, Bill, and that's when we had the meeting, and I think Doug was there with the state. I mean, one of my questions, first of all, I saw what the financial gains were for both, towns. I was pretty amazed that pretty much everything is funded, through the state, and the state obviously is pushing for this. And one of my questions to the I can't remember the woman from the state's name. I said, what if this goes away in a couple of years? She's like, it won't. So she was pretty adamant that this funding from the state is going to be there for a long time, and what Shanna said when we started in April, Shanna, we started in April too. This was something that was, we looked at it, maybe from a newspaper notice that saw Southwick going the other direction. We said, hey, let's see if we can get involved here. So this was a very quick process. And I give credit to everybody involved that we got to where we are today, because this is usually something that takes 6 months. We're going to try to do it in 3. So
Agreed.
Yeah. And to Mr. Adams' point, the E911 funding mechanism was done legislatively, and that's where most of this grant money is coming from, is from a fee charged to every cell phone subscriber. It would also take an act of the legislature to take it away, right? And it's an important thing for public safety. It would be a political minefield for someone to go and propose legislation to take that money away. States, including the state of Massachusetts, have been known to divert that money from its intended purpose from time to time at the state level, Massachusetts being one of them, right? Yeah. But you can see that they are incentivizing the regional dispatch through this funding mechanism, and to continue to fund technological improvements at regions, right? You're talking about texting 911 and FaceTiming 911 and the enhanced GPS and so on and so forth that have either started already or are coming. And what they're forecasting and telegraphing from this whole deal is the regions are going to get that capability, because a lot of that money comes from the state and the equipment comes from the state. They're eventually going to start telling the single seat dispatch or the single town dispatch, yeah, no, you're not getting that round of stuff, right? That's only going to these guys, and or the funding to buy it. So that's what we see as the writing on the wall. And I think, what Mr. Adams was alluding to too, the funding mechanism is there to support this, and it's financially advantageous for both communities to be in a regional situation versus having Southwick in a different region and Westfield not, or so on. And I think, our departments frankly, the police and the fire departments already work so closely together. Especially, we do a lot of mutual aid today on the EMS side. And now that we're full ALS, we're supporting each other in that endeavor in each other's towns. We're supporting you guys on the fire side, obviously your mutual aid on fire, and then our police department has worked together all the time too. So the simpatico there for the two communities to work on a dispatch thing was natural. The funding just makes it happen.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, you have dozens and dozens of regional communication centers throughout the Commonwealth, in the eastern part of the state, central part. And now that, obviously there's going to be more of us in the western part. And right now you've got groups that already have arrangements with state police barracks and other, out in the Berkshires and places like that. So, this is the trend, and it's going to be the trend for many different types of services. And this just happens to be one of those types of services. Yeah,
I certainly think, this is the way to go. I mean, it's beneficial to Westfield, Southwick. It appears that the $2.1 million is going to cover, the equipment needs for Southwick, which you need it anyway. That's a home run. And, the communication needs between Southwick and Westfield, which I understand is going to be a microwave with a fiber backup, or did I have it the other way around?
Depends on how the weather is. It's either going to be microwave with a fiber backup or fiber with a microwave backup, right? It works both ways.
And for the Southwick side, Doug and I spoke a little bit about this. There was a concern about manning, someone at the Southwick station to answer walk-ins. And is that correct?
Yeah, there was two real concerns, and as part of this discussion was we had gone down the path with the other guy. The other guy is used to taking in other communities into their regional dispatch. So they kind of have a run book or a playbook, right? Oh, you're going to have a dark station. You need this, 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 and this. Oh, we're going to have this communications. We need this, 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 and this. Oh, you're going to do this. You need this, 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 and this. Oh, you're not going to have a dispatch anymore. So if we have a double communication failure, we are going to send a dispatcher to your community to man a tiny dispatch center that you're going to set up the office space for, but we'll put the equipment in to operate. Well, Westfield doesn't have any of those things today. You don't have a dark station. You don't have an empty dispatch, et cetera, et cetera. So we needed to talk about that with Nina. It's all in the grant. That's why it's not really focused in here, except for the coverage of the station in the event of a double comms failure. We joke about the microwave and the fiber, but God forbid, we're going to be giving up that dispatch capability and losing our certification to run a dispatch out of Southwick and repurposing the dispatch space for a community facing window for that station that's normally manned by a dispatcher that's no longer going to be there. So we needed to put in the IMA that if there is a double failure, whether it's weather, whether it's technological or whatever, that a qualified certified dispatcher will be sent to man the space that we will provide to provide dispatch services for the period of time until the place is back, right? Everybody can cover it for half hour, an hour while those arrangements are being made for somebody to be sent. But that needed to be accommodated because we're going to lose that capability when we join the region. But the rest of it was, a lot of it was we had to go and talk to Nina and the state 911 folks in the grant process to make sure we accommodated all those, I called it the action item list that we ran with the other guy to make sure that we were getting like for like, not just as a customer, but those were important things to provide. We are going now, if you come into Southwick at 7 o'clock or at night or 2 in the morning, that station is manned by the dispatcher. Well, when that situation changes, you're going to have your cops on the road and your patrol sergeant on the road. The station's empty. You need to technologically accommodate someone showing up at the police station, to open the door and put them in a safe space until an officer can be brought back to the station to deal with a potential dangerous situation that could be happening. That was all accounted for on the other side, and we needed to talk through it with Nina, and it's in the grant process. And that's why this IMA isn't burdened with a lot of technical piece about this, that, and the other. It's in the grant and it's in the operational side, and the exec board will be able to oversee that and how it works. That's why, we also talked about, there was some discussion in the IMA about that operationally we're going to have to overcome a couple of details, and some of it's simple. Like today, our cops call their number and the dispatch number. Westfield's different. I wouldn't say backward. It's opposite. They say the dispatch and the officer number. It's going to take time for either Westfield's going to know when they're talking to Southwick to use our convention, or we're all going to agree that we'll just switch it, and it'll take some time to get it used to, but the protocol needs to be worked out. That stuff's not part of the IMA because it's really operational. It doesn't impact cost. It doesn't impact safety, as long as you guys all agree on how you're doing it, right? And so that kind of stuff. The only piece that we were really concerned about was because there's cost in the grant to provide the equipment in Southwick. Southwick had to provide the space to provide an alternate dispatch, and we don't have control over the personnel and CBAs. If you are ordering a dispatcher down to Southwick to go sit in the fire station to man the dispatch for 4 hours or 8 hours, that may have to be accommodated in your CBA, right? But we need an assurance that will happen in the unlikely event that we lose connection to the dispatch center, because we still do have to provide 911 service in Southwick during that event, right? And it was a big topic with the other guy. They have a whole process and procedure for it. We needed to make sure that, and it's not something you deal with today. So it was a new experience, and we had to make sure we accommodated it.
Thank you, Doug. So
Thank you.
On the IMA, is there a set start time on this? Or, I mean, I could see there's a lot of work that's got to get done here to make this at least fully operational. Is there a set start date for the IMA?
I think that was still to be filled. We're waiting, like, you have to get the approval. So if you look at the last whereas clause in here, that it has to be approved by the state 911 department. So we're waiting for, approval date. It's on page 2. There's a blank spot right there because that's something that still needs to be filled in, that if the approval is not obtained by a certain date, that this agreement would be deemed null and void. So we do need the approval of the state 911 department of this agreement.
And it's going to depend where we end up on the grant cycle. We're at the tail end of it. We may have already missed it for this year. I don't even know. They haven't announced it yet. We've told them, because we have the 2 letters of attestation outstanding out there, we did talk to the state, and we've been repeatedly talking to the state to say, hey, look, we're going to do this. Award us the grant. We'll just tell you where to mail the check in a couple of weeks. Bear with us, right? They didn't really like that answer too much. But so we're budgeted this year, Carl, correct, to continue status quo in Southwick, because we didn't know that we were going to get this done. So we just passed town meeting. We passed our budget for fiscal year 22. That doesn't mean we will if we are awarded the grant and there's going to be time to implement the radio system, the fiber, the microwave, the remote console, and start testing and doing, but it's going to be triggered by the award of the grant, right, to start the process rolling. And I think that's why those dates are blank, because we really don't know. It's the time frame is certainly we have a window of when we see it. If we don't make the grant this year, we'll certainly be a very strong contender for next year, fiscal year, January, February, March timeframe. But that's the timeline we're on. But I don't think it should be a gate to us executing the IMA and we can figure out a date out in the future that would end the IMA if this whole thing doesn't happen, right? But there's been a lot of work and effort put forth by Nina and everyone here, and the chiefs and everyone else, to get us to where we are. Now we just need to get the grant from the state to move. And the state's been fairly consistent in saying, look, you guys are an excellent applicant to the town of Southwick. We love what you're doing, but hey, you got to pick your horse. I was reluctant, and I'm just to be above board, was reluctant to withdraw anything from Westcom until we had, all the interest and everything lined up with Shauna and Nina in Westfield, right? Because from a point of view, I had to do what's in the best interest of the town of Southwick at that point. So I'm hoping we can come out of this or this next meeting with an executed IMA with, a reasonable date in there, we can then proceed forward to bring it back to the Board of Selectmen to vote, and then take down the other letter of attestation,
Right.
and then call the state and say, I now know where you can send the check.
Right, and then submit this document after all the parties have executed it to the state, and then they'll know, and then they can make a decision on the grant award and the timing of it. And then it's going to take a while to do all of this implementation, because there's a lot of procurement, there's technical issues. So it's going to take a while to implement this. Everybody needs to recognize that up front.
So the actual agreement would be in place for a period of time before Westfield actually started answering calls from Southwick. The test period. Southwick's going to build up their system so that it meets all Southwick's requirements. We have to get the communication between Southwick and Westfield set up, and we have to get the training and things that I'm not even sure what needs to happen on the Westfield end, but Nina, of course, knows.
Right, and she can speak to the schedule of implementation based upon an actual, like the day the award comes in, and you're given permission to go forward with implementing it.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Councilor Burns, please.
Yes, sir. Yeah, first of all, thanks a lot. You guys did a lot of work on this from the time that we had that second meeting. I can see we've been working very diligently on this. My question is this time sensitive? Because when the young lady from the state was there, she kind of like hinted to her. I'm sure Councilor Adams can back this up, but like hinted to her it was time sensitive that we had. I would assume till June 30th.
Well, I think you're right. I'm sorry, Chairman Oniski, I didn't mean to jump
No,
in.
please.
I believe you're correct, but we've been communicating with the state. I know Nina has been communicating with the state constantly to let them know where we are and what we're doing. And this is a huge move for both communities.
Yeah.
It's a huge move for the town of Southwick, right? A lot is riding on it, literal, life and death, right? So we wanted to make sure that this was done right, and it was done correctly. And the implementation, should everything go well, the implementation needs to be done correctly. The state understood that, and I kind of half-heartedly was saying to the state, hey, we know this is what we're going to do. We'll tell you where to send the check. They're in awareness of what it is we're trying to do here and what's going on. I'm hoping that we're able to get this done in this grant cycle so that we can start the implementation within this fiscal year. If it doesn't and it rolls to the next grant cycle, it was a fair trade that we had to make in order to make sure that we did this correctly. If we rushed and did it wrong, and for the town of Southwick and for the city of Westfield, it would be bad for everybody. Either it would lead to bad implementation or a bad agreement. And I think that, working with everyone so far, I think we ended up in the best place. And now we just kind of hope that we get in this grant cycle. If we don't, we're going to go to the next one. And from our town, we did budget our dispatch to run another year with some repairs to the radio system that we have and everything else to get us to the next grant cycle if we had to, because we had a hard date of town meeting was coming. We had to do something. So that's what we've done. If it comes sooner, that's great too. But I think we had to plan for the worst case and hope for the best.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, we also on our side have to address language that we have in our collective bargaining agreement with dispatch, that it is aware that this process is underway and that there may be a reconfiguration of that service, and that it may be partnered with your community providing it.
Okay. Well, I mean, timing wise from our end, we'll meet again next week, once, twice if we have to. And then it goes to our, recommendation comes from L&O to our full council, which should be meeting on the 17th of June. Provided that the positive recommendation comes, or the approval comes really from the full city council. I mean, we talk about it, we get into the weeds here in L&O, but really it's an advisory vote that we're taking to give to city council. City council could vote the entire, opposite way. And I would hope that they would take the advice of people looking into the details. But I mean, everybody on this call knows how that works sometimes. But best case, we would approve for the mayor to sign the agreement on the 17th, night of the 17th. So assuming that he would, sign it, within a day or two, then it needs to go back to Southwick for the selectmen to vote on it.
Yep.
Correct.
And we carry this on our agenda as under old business, so the board can already authorize itself to sign the agreement that's already been made in principle that Sean has provided everyone.
Okay, so you don't need a vote at this point.
We would vote to sign it once you execute it. We would also, vote to sign it and we could execute it, and I'd have to look at our meeting schedule to see where that, lines up. If you're meeting on the 17th, we would probably meet on the 21st, Carl? Oh, we're not
no,
meeting on the 21st.
You're
We
on
would
your
call a
sub-
special meeting of the Board of Selectmen to vote on that.
Yeah,
But,
Okay.
or you could just, make sure you have a contingent vote.
correct. And, I was designated by the board to work on this issue because obviously we've got a little bit different open meeting complexion with a 3-member board. So I can't talk to any of the other 2 guys about anything else without violating the open meeting law. So they designated myself as the select board designee for this agreement. So we have negotiated an agreement in principle with Shauna and Ben Coyle and Carl and the chiefs. If you guys are acceptable to the document as it's written right now, subject to filling in the dates, we're going to be okay on the Board of Selectmen when we bring it to them to a vote, because I'm going to recommend that we execute it based on what we've negotiated here.
Thanks, Doug. I will also add that, our chiefs are not on this call, but I did receive emails from them saying they're in full support and, what they've been working with Nina, prior to this, and, they trust her judgment and all of this, and they're 100% for it. So
Ours as well.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, we have the same emails from our chiefs too.
Great. Well, are there any other questions or comments? I mean, I think we went over, quite a bit of this, and I'm glad it was helpful to me, certainly. And I think it's a positive step.
Yeah, Bill, I will say, back to Councilor Burns' question, at the meeting, the woman from the state was like, when I walked out of there, it was like, you guys need to make like a decision tomorrow or we're not going to get the grant. I was like, wow. But I mean, and she said, the quicker you make this, the quicker you stay on top of this list of other communities that I have. But I think Nina is very optimistic that we're going to fall pretty good within the grants. And I got to give kudos to Nina because she knows dispatch, but she's never been through this process. So that was a learning process on her end too. But I can assure Southwick that she knows her business of dispatch, and the people that we have here, and the connections that I couldn't think of a better community to do this with. Your chief is actually a Westfield guy, Landis, that grew up in Westfield. I went to school with him. Billy, I didn't realize grew up in Southwick himself, was from Southwick. So this is a great, I can't think of a better community to do this with. And I wanted at that meeting to make sure that Southwick had a say, in how this, this executive board, they should have a say. There's no question about it. Everybody involved should have a say in how we move forward. And even though it's in Westfield, I think it was very important that Southwick should have a say, because this is a big move for everybody here, and they need to certainly have a say, because there's a lot going on in their community, and this is a big step for them. So I think very optimistic of what I'm seeing and hearing, and I think we're going to fall pretty well. And hopefully the IMA is what the state, they really want to see this. Once this is signed, then that grant kind of gets released, and that's what she's waiting for. So this was something, and this was probably in my time before Mr. Oniski and Mr. Burns were on the council, that we spent a ton of money. I was part of it on L&O to get to this point. I mean, we spent a lot of money to get the dispatch center in hopes that where we are today, we're going to go regional. So there was a lot of money spent to get to where we are now. And certainly the equipment is getting older, but you know, the state grant, you know, is crazy what they're giving, and it just makes sense for everybody. So I think if and when this happens, there's been a lot of hard work on both ends of this, and we definitely moving forward, you know, there's going to be some, you know, there's always going to be, you know, look at something that may not be working quite right, but I think with the people in both of these towns, we can certainly take care of any, you know, things that we have to take care of and put our heads together. And I'm pretty optimistic this is going to be a great relationship with both towns and that we have here. So thank you guys for everything you're doing on your end.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions or comments or anything you think we need to be ready for next week as far as, you know, well, obviously we need to get the blanks filled in, which I'm thinking we could do that. Well, we meaning you, Shanna. I don't know. Is Nina back Friday or Monday?
Back on Friday, and there's just a couple things I need to follow up with her and some of the operational questions I had. I just want to make sure that she understands the changes that Ben and I talked about yesterday. And other than that, I think we're good to go.
Okay, so hopefully Friday and Monday, and really even the day Tuesday, we'll have to, you know, get this thing in a final shape. We could meet on it again. I've got it scheduled for Tuesday at 5 o'clock for everybody's information, and go from there. Are there any other questions or comments anyone would like to make?
Bill, I think we just want to, and Shanna probably has it. And I know the council, and I'm pretty sure the council's going to be pretty excited about this also. Just the breakdown of the grants. And Shanna, I'm not sure if you have it or if Nina has that.
Nina has
that's
that.
Going to be a, yeah, that's going to be, they're going to want to see what that breakdown is. Of course, everything's financial when we get to our point usually. So having that exact breakdown through, you know, maybe the next couple of years, kind of where things may fall or we hope they fall, will be just something we want to see. That's all.
Right. When I talk with her on Friday, I'll make sure she has that information for you guys.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else then from Southwick? Thank you, Carl and Doug, for joining us. I appreciate it.
Yes.
You offered a lot, and we look forward to working with Southwick. As always, I actually work right down the street from Doug, so we'll get it done.
Absolutely. Again, thank you for all the hard work from everybody on this, and we really appreciate it and looking forward to a long and successful partnership.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Carl.
you. So, counselors, can we have a motion to leave this item in committee?
Motion to leave in committee?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Roll call. Adams.
Yes.
Burns.
Yes.
Oniski is a yes. Thank you all. Last item on the list here is item 6, adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Roll call. Adams.
Yes.
Burns.
Yes.
Oniski, yes. Adjourn at 5:45. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Have a
Thanks.
great night. Thank
See
you.
ya.